I think we're live. All right. First thing to announce is, live video is still starting. Now I'm live. I want to make sure that people are tuned in so they get this announcement because I'm going to be gone for a couple weeks. So far I don't see anyone on yet, but there's kind of a dead zone here. Let's give it 30 seconds here. There we go. Now they're popping in. Okay, so the first thing to say is that I will be gone for 2 weeks. Next week I have the Pastors Conference for the English District Midwest region up in beautiful Green Lake, Wisconsin. It's a new place. I've never been there before. So I'm, action needed, too low FPS. The current frame rate is too low. Please set the frame rate to 15 to 60. Why does this always have to be so complicated? I have no idea what I'm doing here.
So I would say, what does that mean?
Whatever happened to plug and play?
I've never told us that.
Learn more.
Frame
I don't know. Let's see. Someone's saying something here on it.
Yeah, what is a frame
Where
rate?
do you even go and adjust that?
Okay, Sarah says I'm live now. So I didn't do anything. It just says action needed too low. I don't know how to change my frame rate.
I didn't know we had
I didn't know what a frame rate is.
Probably doing it itself.
Maybe it is. We'll just go with that.
Oh, when you send video, it's a series of single images.
Right.
And the frame rate,
Oh,
the more the
I
frame
see.
rate is, the smoother it looks.
I see.
It could be choppy.
Right.
15 will look real choppy. 60 would look pretty smooth.
Oh, the
Okay,
more,
well,
the more you send.
I'm hoping that
Yeah, it's 60 per second.
people can see this.
Oh, I would think it would be the opposite.
No, 15 is
Yeah.
All right. So next, now I can't get my. Well, I don't know what I've done there. So who knows? Next week I'll be in beautiful Green Lake, Wisconsin for the Pastors Conference. The week after that, I will be in Oregon visiting my brother. So we're looking forward to that. Going to see him, and my sister's coming up from Arizona too, and so we will. No, that's the next week. First week is a conference. Next week is vacation with my brother and sister, and I'm taking Danya too, just because I'm a nice guy. So 2 weeks.
In Liberal Portland?
Yeah, well, no, he lives in Eugene, so it's pretty bad there, but it's not as bad as Portland, from what I hear. And he's kind of a right winger, so I don't know how he survives
Really?
out there. Yeah, I don't know. He is more. I don't know. I guess he is. He used to be. Maybe he's not. So anyway, so that's the story. Now I'm trying to see how I can see comments. I have no idea where comments are anymore. They've changed everything. I quit. I didn't do it for 1 week, and now everything's different.
Is this Microsoft or?
No, it's Facebook.
Oh, Facebook?
And the live dashboard, everything's missing now. That used to be on the live dashboard.
Dina's watching with you.
Good.
She's in Arizona.
All right. So maybe if Dina can see, then we're okay. All right. So that's the story. We won't be going for 2 weeks. So this week, though, we are starting with Psalm 119. It's throwing up too low FPS. I have no idea what to do.
Tell them to raise it up.
Yeah. Well, increase it.
Raise it.
Increase it, you bunch of morons. I don't know. Yeah.
Dina said, yeah, I can see you.
Okay, good. Well, if Dina can see me, Dina can see me and Sarah can see me. So there you go. And two others are online. Psalm 119. We're waking our way through it, beginning at verse 41. Remember, it's an acrostic psalm, so each section of the psalm is based on a letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and then each sentence of that section begins with that letter. 119, Psalm 119, beginning at verse 41. Yeah, 41 is where we are now. 41. This section is called Wow. It's based on that letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and it's 41 through 48 is the Wow section. Each sentence begins with the letter that letter Wow. The Wow sounds like a W very frequently, and it's Yahweh. That's the letter that's in the middle of Yahweh. Let your steadfast love come to me, O Lord, your salvation according to your promise. Then shall I have an answer for him who taunts me, for I trust in your word. And take not the word of truth utterly out of my mouth, for my hope is in your rules. I will keep your law continually, forever and ever, and I shall walk in a wide place, for I have sought your precepts. I will also speak of your testimonies before kings, and shall not be put to shame. For I find my delight in your commandments, which I love. I will lift up my hands toward your commandments, which I love, and I will meditate on your statutes. Okay, so the first thing, who is the one who taunts us? Yeah, Satan, yeah. Or who is behind the one who taunts us. You can look at it that way too. Anytime you are taunted for your faith, that's Satan at work. Anytime somebody mocks you or demeans you or belittles you because of your faith, that's Satan at work. That's what he loves to do. And what destroys Satan? Well, word. The word of God is what destroys Satan, specifically. Let's look at Ephesians 6:17. Ephesians 6:17. And take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying at all times in the Spirit with all prayer and supplication. To that end, keep alert with all perseverance, making supplication for all the saints and also for me. The words may be given to me in my opening mouth, blah, blah, blah. So the point is the sword of the Spirit. What is it? The word. Yeah, the sword of the Spirit. You know, I say it all the time, and people just don't wrap their head around it, that the word of God is pure power. You know, that's all you need. All you need is the word of God. Satan can't stand up against it, and none of Satan's minions can stand up against it. It's all you need. Hebrews 4:12. Take a look at that. Hebrews 4:12. They take Hebrews out of your Bible now?
Yeah, they did.
Oh, I hate it when they do that.
I know.
Hebrews 4:12.
It's because we didn't finish it. We had about a paragraph to go.
Forever left in our mind.
Yeah.
That helped me know where it was. Thanks, Marilyn.
It's here somewhere.
I should have told him that. You can't go. You haven't finished Hebrews.
Yeah.
Okay, Hebrews 4:12. For the word of God is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing to the division of soul and of spirit, of joints and of marrow, and discerning the thoughts and intentions of the heart. And no creature is hidden from his sight, but all are naked and exposed to the eyes of him to whom we must give an account. I love that verse. The word of God is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword. This is, and it's important for Christians not to lose confidence in that truth. Because if we do, then we're left with human solutions. Okay? We're left with human solutions. I mean, go down to your local Christian bookstore and look at the curriculums that they have and see how many of them are based on some kind of pop psychology or wishful thinking or, I mean, there's some good ones, no doubt. There's some good ones. But there's just so much out there. There's just silliness. And it's like we'll have 3 words from the Bible, and then we'll have the rest of the lesson. Well, shouldn't we spend more time in the Bible than that? I mean, isn't the Word where we get power? Or even when I was growing up, sometimes in church services, you'd be hard pressed to find the Bible reading. I at one time I was part of a church where the pastor didn't particularly like reading the Bible, and so sometimes he'd say, "Oh, we don't need to read all that stuff," and he'd read 1 verse, or 2 verses, something like that. And his sermons, this was before, praise God, before we were in Missouri Synod. His sermons were pop psychology. Feel good, everything, make everything. That's where I learned the phrase from my father. Well, if I didn't know who Jesus was when I went in there, I certainly wouldn't know coming out. Because it was, he was a nice guy, good speaker, fun guy, entertaining, funny. As kids, we loved him because he was a lot of fun, and he always had lots of fun stuff to talk about. And VBS was always fun, and we did VBS. We went swimming, and we went pet horses, and I can't tell you any biblical stuff we ever talked about, but we had a lot of fun. It was fun. And and you have to balance some of that. The church should not be a drudge, especially for kids. It shouldn't be like, oh, it's a drudge. I got to go to church now. Although, eventually they all get there. Little Caleb Ilkin looked at me when I did his acolyte training, and he looks at me and he says, "I've wanted to do this my whole life." I loved it.
He was a very intense person. We found that out in Sunday school.
Yeah.
Yeah. He gave a prayer. Not
Did he?
this passage, but the week before.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wanted to read the prayer at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. We may be looking at the next seminarian there. I don't know. He loves serving.
Pastor said, being an acolyte is the way to serve God at church, and he raised his hand and he said, "Well, could you tell me some other ways that I could serve God?"
That's like, Caleb, one thing at a time, buddy.
Was it Kate's voice?
Yeah, I don't know.
She
We-
said that she talks to him about stuff like that and encourages him.
Yeah, she was surprised. I talked to her later and told her about him leading the prayer. She was, he said he wanted to be an acolyte and everything. She says, well, that means we go to church. So, brought her back.
Yeah, it's very exciting for a pastor to have kids like that. Every so often, you don't get them all the time, but every so often you get a kid that's just like, he just loves every minute of it.
How old is he?
4th grade. Yeah. He's just starting. This is his initial year for acolyting.
Oh,
4th grade. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
You didn't take him on Sunday. No, you just took the middle school.
No, I'm just teaching the middle school, high school. Yeah, well, actually, it's just middle school because the high schoolers, we don't have a lot of high schoolers right now.
He said, we got to work on those high schools.
Well, when you, and that's, what you do because every church goes through this where you have demographics where suddenly you're dried up in some area. So what you do is you start building in the bottom and you bring them up. And that's how you do it, and you just keep moving forward, and you build them forward. And so, we're low on high schoolers, but we got several 8th graders that are coming along, and we got people to fill in behind them. So that's good. Let's see, what else? 43. How does the psalmist feel about God's law? Look at 43 through 48 particularly. How does he feel about God's law?
Apparently he loves the commandments,
Yeah.
and he's not going to let anyone else tell him otherwise.
Yeah, he loves it. He loves the law. How often do you find human beings who love the law? And I'll suggest this to you. I think the reason that many people don't love the law is because they don't understand the law. You know, what they think of when you say law is what you can't do, is being limited. You know, this is how God limits us. And of course that's the way we think about it as we grow up, right? Our parents have rules that limit our behavior, what we want to do. And it's only through maturity that we begin to understand, no. They weren't limiting us. They were empowering us and helping us and keeping us alive. You know, things like that, you know. It wasn't a limitation. It was, and the same thing with God. You know, as God frees us in the law. You know, this is a huge gift for us. And it's a huge gift based on two reasons. First of all, it's already been kept for us. So it's not like God comes to us and says, you have to do this. He kept it for us. Okay? It's already been kept for us by Christ. And now, through word and sacrament, he empowers us to keep it. Okay? Thereby making our life much more blessed. Okay? Much more joyful. I think that many Christians, and I'm talking about Christians here because non-Christians, the law is really immaterial. I mean, to a non-Christian, God's law means about the same to them as, you know, Buddha's Eightfold Path means to you. You know, it's just not material. It might be useful information. It might be historically relevant, but it's not material for their lives. But for Christians, I think many Christians hold back from going all in with God because they are afraid they cannot maintain the law. And they're right. They can't. You know, they can't maintain the law. They can't keep the law. You have to get past, what's that? You know, AA has a thing, and I'm trying to think of where it is. But it has a thing of, you know, the first thing you have to do is, I don't know if it's first or not, but it's somewhere in the steps. You have to admit that you are incapable of fixing this problem on your own. Okay? What's that?
Step one.
Step one is it's bigger than me, right? I can't remember what it said. I can't remember the big book quote exactly, but
I'm powerless over alcohol.
Yeah.
My life had become unmanageable, you know.
yeah, I am powerless. So the first thing you have to admit with God is I'm powerless to keep the law. It's not something I can do. And once you get past that it's not on you because it can't be on you, then you can go all in with God and say, this is great. God's going to run this whole show. And I don't have to worry about it. I also don't have to beat myself up for every place I fail. Okay? Which a lot of people have said to me, you know, when I used to go to church, is this a downer? Why is it a downer? Well, because all you ever hear about is, you know, all I ever heard about is what I did wrong. Okay? Well, did you like doing those wrong things? Well, that's immaterial. Well, no, it really matters. Because, you know, if the church's job is to proclaim the law and the gospel, is, you know, Judy and I are talking today, no cutting, no healing. Okay? So that's what Walther was brilliant, and Luther too, at showing that life under the law either leads to one or two places every time. Life under the law leads to the belief that you're a goner. It doesn't matter. There's no point in trying. Just get through life and die, because you're not going to make it anyway. And I've heard people say that. I'm probably going to hell. People have said that seriously. I mean, they've said it seriously. Well, I'm probably going to hell anyway. So, you know, what difference does it make? That's life under the law. The other place that life under the law leads to is self-righteousness. Okay? Well, you know, I'm really good. I'm really good at being a good moral person, and I'm above and beyond everybody else pretty much. And so self-righteousness. That's where life under the law leads to, either self-righteousness. So the person who is self-righteous does not have a clue as to how bad they are, or they're not looking in the mirror. They just avoid looking in the mirror to see how bad they are. Or they're desperate. They just live in despair. Okay, that's life under the law. If you don't understand that the law has been fulfilled for you, that it's already been kept for you, that's where you end up. And that's why people don't want to come to church, is because they live under the law. And it's not that that the church is beating them down. It's that if they're particularly the self-righteous, they're the worst. They don't want to hear that there's anything better than what they have. They don't want to hear that. So you'll hear people say things like, well, I want to go to a church that's uplifting. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, I want to go to a church where we focus on happiness and fun and enjoyment and, pulling all the gusto out of life and just having a great time.
I want to feel good all week.
I want to feel good. Yeah. I talked to a pastor one time who had moved the Lord's Supper to the beginning of the service. And I said, why did you do that? And he says, well, that's kind of a downer. All that stuff about dying on the cross and body and blood and all that. It's kind of a downer, and I want to leave people on a high note. So I moved that to the beginning of the service. We get that out of the way. And then at the end of the service, we have the sermon, and I always make sure the sermon's a peppy, high, fun, feel-good kind of message. Yeah, and I understand that that's appealing, and he's not stupid because he had a big church. Yeah, he was very popular. He's, as far as getting a lot of numbers, he's smart. He knows how to do it. But I don't think that that's my calling. I don't think that God has called me to tell people what makes them feel good. I think he's called me to tell them the truth of his word. The truth of his word has law and gospel. And where you are living in a self-righteous world, the law is going to cut you. And where you're living under despair, the gospel is going to heal you.
What makes you feel better, though, than walking away after communion, knowing that you're forgiven?
Only if you believe you needed to be.
Okay.
See? That's the difference. If you believe that you are a poor, miserable sinner that needs that forgiveness, then there's nothing better than the tangible body and blood of Christ to forgive your sins. If you believe that that's it's kind of a church rite that we do, it's not that important, and I'm a pretty good person. I work really hard. I, give to UNICEF and worldly charity, and I don't beat my children, and I go to work every day, and whatever the things are that make you feel good about yourself. You don't really need forgiveness, sure, it might be nice. And, grandma thinks I should be there, but that's grandma. Grandma's old, she's old fashioned. She doesn't understand that we don't need that stuff anymore. It's really, it goes all the way back to, I've talked about this many times, the different ages of society. And we went through a period of time where people believed in fairies and wood nymphs and, trolls in the woods and things like that. And they also, therefore, believed that the church was a holy and magical place, and that was where you were, the only place you were really protected by God was when you were in the church. And when you received the body and blood of Christ, that you had that breastplate of righteousness and that sword of the Spirit, and that you could go out and you could fight your way through this magical world that they lived in. This is how people believed. We made progress when we learned that wood nymphs weren't real and leprechauns weren't real and things like that. That was important. That was good. But then we began to believe that we didn't need the church anymore. And there's been it's a slow process. What's his name? The right wing commentator, Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson had a really interesting rant about how the church has not been replaced. I mean, the church has not died. The church has just been replaced. That now we go to the holy temple of coronavirus. And he talked about how all human beings have to believe in something. And he's absolutely right, sociologically. Human beings have to believe. Every human being is religious. It might be themselves they believe in. It might be money they believe in. It might be God. It might be Allah. It might be whatever. They have to believe in something. And he made the point that now it's the people are absorbed with all of the stuff about the coronavirus. And he everything is based on, are you following the rules? Or are you not following the rules? Are you vaccinated or you're not vaccinated? And you can see how the public media is just, it's nothing but, 24/7. So it's interesting to me because I think that's not the first time or the only time that the church has been replaced by something else. I think that there's been a lot of times when people have moved their religiosity into something else besides the church. They just, drugs, alcohol, money, whatever, social causes,
Couldn't you more or less say, though, that you believe in Christ, you're in the church, or you believe in something else? Well, the something else just happens to be the coronavirus.
Right.
Now.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
But that doesn't mean the church went away.
Well, what his argument is...
I just don't believe that the coronavirus is taken over the church.
No, what his argument is that he's Tucker Carlson, so he's making a right-wing argument. But I think what's interesting about his argument is the way people gravitate to different things to replace what they need from the church. See what I'm saying? So maybe you could say in the 1960s, what was it that people gravitated to instead of the church?
Drugs.
Maybe it was drugs. Yeah, 1970s, maybe it was something else. I don't know. Still drugs, probably. 80s was fitness and fashion, and do you remember that? Remember the 80s when girls would spend hours making their hair stand up 6 feet off their head? Yeah, started in the 70s and moved into the 80s. Yeah.
80s and early 90s when my daughters were
And I remember that coming out of this house.
And Olivia, or my sister calls her Fig Newton John.
Yes.
And all of her exercise and her, leg warmers and Jane Fonda. Yeah, so I mean, different times have presented different opportunities for us to transfer our religiosity away from the church and into something of our own creation. Environmental, yeah. I mean, you could just name... And it's important, when you read this psalm, you look at the psalmist and you say, this guy just, all he wants to talk about is God. All he wants to talk about is God. He doesn't, because he understands that if you have God on top, all that other stuff is going to fall into line somewhere. If you don't have God on top, none of it's going to fall into line. And that's the difficult statement to people who have all of these various kinds of concerns. And when the church comes to them and says, your concern, I understand your passion for your concern, but it doesn't matter if you don't have a passion for God. If God's not your first passion, nothing else matters. Because, if you save the whales and go to hell, who cares? All the whales are going to heaven. Yeah.
We, in Bible study, we started the book of Ezekiel.
Yeah.
And, like the first chapter, second chapter, God comes to Ezekiel and talks to him.
Mm-hmm.
And you're reminding me a lot about what God had to say,
Yeah.
Don't be distracted by these people. I'm going to tell you what we've got to tell them.
Right.
Don't pick and choose. Do what I say.
Right.
Don't do what they say, you know. And we're distracted by, you know, what's going on in the world around us.
We've always
God
been
is
that way.
like, stay focused. You're my man.
Right.
Stay focused.
But we've always been that way ever since Adam and Eve.
It's the human condition.
Yeah.
Well, the way I can't remember who said it, was one of the commentators at some point said that human beings always confuse creator and creation. From the very beginning, that's been the problem, is that they worship creation instead of the creator. So Adam and Eve looked around and they said, well, the creator told us not to eat from this fruit, but man, it looks delicious. And it's, you know, it can't be bad for you. Let's worship, let's do that instead. Why on earth would you eat that when God said you can eat anything in this garden except that? Why on earth would you eat that? You know, when the parent says, don't put the knife in the outlet, you can guarantee that they're going to make a beeline for the outlet. You know, so you know, yeah, when the teacher says, don't use your cell phone during the test. Do you remember? You know, I don't know. Well, you guys weren't. I don't know if you were retired.
No,
You were still
I
teaching.
would die now for teaching with cell phone.
Remember when kids they could text without looking at their phone? I was that flabbergasted me. Yeah, they had their phones in their now up in Washington. I don't know if it was here, but up in Washington they would text with in their hoodies. They'd have their phone inside their hoodie and they'd text each other for answers.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the teacher turned their back, they'd just peek out and see what, you know, oh yeah, do A, B, C, D, you know.
Yeah.
And then they were cheating left and right on tests.
Yeah, I'm sure they still do that. Keep up the
My
grade.
sister wrote all the answers on her tab.
It was a lot harder. It was a lot harder in our day to
A
cheat.
little more work.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I'm going to talk about that Sunday. Sunday we're going to talk about finding loopholes in the law. You know, human beings are born litigators.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to tell the story of Noah. You know, we always had, and it worked fine with Neil, you have to eat a few bites of everything at dinner. That's all we ever said. Eat a few bites of everything. Okay? Noah wanted to know how many bites. Neil never asked. Neil just ate a few bites. You know? No, how many bites do I have to eat? And I can remember this lengthy negotiation at dinner that ended with, I'm 3, so I have to eat 3 bites. Fine. At that point, I didn't care anymore. The broccoli was cold. Just eat. I don't care. And that's what he did. He ate 3 bites. When he turned 4, he ate 4 bites.
3 bites.
Now he's 23. He eats 23 bites. I guess I don't know. I don't pay attention anymore.
Donnie did say she was a really good wife.
She's what?
A really good wife. And they were talking about really good people.
Oh,
They wrote that in the comments.
I can't see the stupid comments on this new format.
Oh, well, it says I'm a
Because
really
you
good
have the
wife.
wrong frame rate, so
Apparently so. I don't know. How do you see the comments? I can't see them.
I don't know, they're just down at the bottom.
I couldn't
Look on
see
your-
mine either when I
Put
was.
Facebook on your phone, maybe you can see them.
Oh my gosh, it's so irritating.
I couldn't-
Every time I get this straight, then they change it.
No, when I was watching from home. I can't get them at home anymore.
Well, watch the comments for me, Judy, in case somebody has a question, because I can't see them.
Okay, well, that was really worthwhile comment.
Oh, here. Down here now.
Down at the bottom.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Yeah, Donnie also said, love is what conquers Satan. He has none and tries to turn love into hatred. Satan must hate Christ more than we know. Oh,
I didn't get that.
yeah, that's a good insight. Is that Satan hates God, and that's his goal is to try to get us to hate him as well. Yeah. Oh yeah. Finally, I found the comments on the new format here. That's good.
You had spooks in your computer when you were gone, huh?
I guess. I don't know. No, Facebook changed. They do that every now and then. Okay, Zayin is the next one. It's the next letter in the alphabet, 49 through 56. Remember your word to your servant, in which you have made me hope. This is my comfort in my affliction, that your promise gives me life. This is my comfort in my affliction, that your promise gives me life. The insolent utterly deride me, but I do not turn away from your law. When I think of your rules from of old, I take comfort, O Lord. Hot indignation seizes me because of the wicked who forsake your law. Your statutes have been my songs in the house of my sojourning. I remember your name in the night, O Lord, and keep your law. This blessing has fallen to me, that I have kept your precepts. We are wise to continually call God to his promises. Right? He calls God to his promise here. Because in so doing, we remember. Okay? In so doing, we remember. Guess who it is that forgets? We do. God never forgets his promises. But we forget them all the time. We say and do stupid things because we've forgotten God's promises. So it's important to always call God to his promises. There's a Greek word in the liturgy for it called anamnesis, and it simply means remembering. And so much of what we speak in the liturgy is remembering great acts of God, particularly around the Lord's Supper and the proper preface. You'll hear all kinds of stories of remembering. Depends on what service we're in and all that kind of things. But a lot of times you'll hear these long recitations. In some churches it's even longer. Ours is less than some churches, but like the Greek Orthodox really get into it, and it can go a long time for the remembering. Dina says, I brought a different Bible with me, and it's worded so different. Yeah, different translations will have different wording. Yep, that's very true.
Tell us to look up Bible Gateway.
You can also look up on, Judy says you can look up on your phone Bible Gateway, and then you can pick ESV, which is English Standard Version. That's the one I use. I love verses 51 through 54, and he talks about hot indignation. and I don't know what, Dina, I don't know what your translation is there for hot indignation, but it's a really rare word in the Bible. So it's not, people aren't quite sure what to do with it from the Hebrew because we don't have a lot of reference for it. But it refers to some kind of raging heat. It is literally, Dina says, thank you, Judy. It is literally a rage against the person who opposes God. Sometimes I think one of our faults is that we are too nice. We put up with too much. We tolerate stupidity to the nth degree in the church instead of saying, no, I'm sorry, you're wrong. And there have been times, many times in my ministry when in retrospect I wish that I had been more forthright because people have wandered away into horrendous situations that I saw coming, but I didn't want to upset them. I didn't want to offend them. And so I tried to be nice instead of saying, you're sinning. This is sin. You are blatantly sinning and you're pretending that you're not. Okay? But I don't know, upset them and then they'll leave and blah, blah, blah. Well, they left anyway. Yeah. They left anyway and they left believing that they were okay. And they weren't.
I think that's something you learn when you get older.
Yeah.
You were younger then, and
Yep.
right now, you know what to say a little more.
Yeah, it's very true that the younger you are, the less confidence you have, not only in your own ideas, but less confidence you have in God, because that grows with age. Assuming you're faithful. I mean, obviously there are some people who are 80 years old and who are just as immature spiritually as Caleb Ilkin is far better than they are, because they have not striven to grow. So you have to feed your faith to grow. But if you have fed your faith and it has grown, then you have so much more confidence in what God says. And you're capable of saying, no, I'm sorry, that's wrong. Is this wrong? There's no, and one of the, I know sometimes people think it's a whipping boy because it comes up so much, but my heavens, it's crammed down our throats so much. Abortion. Abortion is just crammed down our throats, and we are too nice about it. It is not a nice medical procedure. It is the murder of unborn children. Millions of unborn children have been murdered for the sake of convenience. And we as the church have largely not only stood by and put up with it, but a lot of the liberal Protestantism has embraced it. And so it's okay. It's great. It's wonderful. It's your body, your choice. You know? And I jokingly always say, well, at what age is it not okay to kill children? You know, maybe we should say 12. You know, by 12, you know, you kind of know what they're going to turn out to be. They might be too much work. So you can go ahead and kill them, you know.
Well, didn't the baby have a choice with their body?
Yeah, no, the baby doesn't have a choice. And it's so irrational and so illogical.
Yeah.
And we as a people have just stood by and let it happen. You know, and I think that in my early ministry, I just didn't fathom that it would ever go this far. I just kept thinking, well, you know, nobody's ever going to use abortion as you know, birth control. That's just ridiculous. Nobody ever. I knew all kinds of people who had babies, you know, out of wedlock, and they didn't abort their children. Nobody does that. Our nice people don't do that. Well, now here we are, and millions and millions of children.
We've got two generations that have probably grown up where it's always been legal,
Yeah.
and they just don't understand anything else.
Well, I grew up. It was legal when I grew up. It was, you know, I was 10 years old. Roe versus Wade. You know, but nice people didn't do that. That was, you just never even fathomed that's just not what you did. You know, and there might be somebody somewhere who does that, but no one we know. You know, and now it's common. You know.
Well, I think now people don't believe that it's conception.
No.
Which,
Well, they've won they've won the argument on life.
yeah.
When does life begin?
Yeah.
Life begins when the child is viable. Okay, outside the womb.
Yeah.
They've won that battle.
Yeah.
That with people's belief system.
Yeah.
Yeah, rather than life begins at conception.
Right.
And I don't know if we could have fought any harder on that, or if we should have fought any harder on that, or what. But that's one of those areas where the church has been too nice. You know, just too nice. The church kind of rose up. It was kind of interesting. It seemed as though to me on euthanasia. Did you notice that?
Yeah, there isn't much talk about this anymore.
No, Kevorkian just sort of faded away.
Well, he died.
Yeah, well, yeah, he died. But I mean, his Kevorkianism
Yeah.
just sort of faded away, and you hear very little about physician-assisted suicide, except in Oregon and a couple other states where it's legal. That's
They do it themselves now because they have access to.
well, yeah, but you could always do it yourself.
Yeah.
The issue is that what society was trying to do, what Satan was trying to do, was say that it's good and meet and proper for you to decide whenever you should die, and that's a good thing. You know, my body, my choice. I can decide when I die too. And it's kind of funny that that one has just sort of faded away.
Well, most people don't believe that God lives in them anyhow.
Right.
You know,
Right.
we're in his temple.
Yeah. All the blessings fall to the one who keeps God's law. Let's see what Dr. Billadue's chiming in here with.
Oh, what department is she in now?
She's on vacation right now.
Oh,
Yes, this one is on. No, whoops, that's something else. There's. Funny how people don't relate euthanasia to abortion. Yeah,
yeah.
They don't make the connection that murder is murder, and it's just murder of an older person instead of murder of a younger person, but it's
And
still
they think
murder.
If an older person's okay, they're going to die anyhow.
Right.
Quickly, sooner than later.
Yeah. Well, that's why I've told my sister a million times. You know, if it were up to me, you know, I would just go through with the needle of the nursing home, you know, just room to room. Yep. But it's not up to me. You know, no, God never said I could make that decision as to when someone lives or when someone dies. You know, this not my decision. All blessings fall to the one who keeps God's law. Before you complain about what has gone poorly in your life, look to your keeping of the law and see if something could have been avoided. Okay? In other words, treat the law like an owner's manual. if I haven't changed the oil in my car for 40,000 miles, and I go to Buick and I throw a fit because the engine froze up, they're going to look at me and say, "Did you change the oil?" Well, no, you didn't come and tell me. You didn't come knock on my door and tell me to change the oil. No, we wrote it down. We assumed you could read it. Well, bad assumption. Who reads those things? You know, and that's exactly what God says to us. Is, I've written it down for you. I've told you everything you need to know to have a more joyful and more blessed life. And if you don't follow it, you're going to have less joy and less blessing. And you might even lose your faith. You know, your faith might die. Unfortunately, I wish we had a little red light that went off on our foreheads that told us when our faith is about to die. But we don't. You know, like the low fuel light in your car. I thought that was so... I remember our first car with a low fuel light. I thought that was the neatest thing in the world. And I always drove it right down to the low fuel light so I could see it come on. You know, I thought it was so cool. Okay, next one is Heth. The Lord is my portion. I promise to keep your words. I entreat your favor with all my heart. Be gracious to me according to your promise. When I think on my ways, I turn my feet to your testimonies. I hasten and do not delay to keep your commandments. Though the cords of the wicked ensnare me, I do not forget your law. At midnight I rise to praise you because of your righteous rules. I am a companion of all who fear you, of those who keep your precepts. The earth, O Lord, is full of your steadfast love. Teach me your statutes. It's not easy. No easy task to proclaim God's law in a world that does not value God's law. At midnight, that's the point is he's alone. But he gathers during the daytime with companions who fear the Lord. Christianity, by the way, is meant to be a communal business. It's not a lone wolf kind of thing. The wicked cords will ensnare. So don't be separated from the church. Okay? And that's what so many of our egalitarian millennials and busters don't want to hear. You can't have a decapitated Christ. They like a decapitated Christ because you can work your hand up inside his neck and you can make him say whatever you want. You know, Jesus, I like to stay home and drink coffee on Sunday morning instead of going to church. That's okay, isn't it? Oh yeah, that's just fine. Yep, you're a great, swell person. You know. The church says, no, you need to get your rear into church. You need to be here for Bible study. You need to be here for worship. You need to be here for the Lord's Supper. Oh, I don't want to hear that. So I'll just cut the body off. You know, Christ's head comes with the body. That's why church is a communal business. Faith is not an individual exercise. It's communal. It has always been communal. It is intended to be communal. The world we live in today, this isolationistic world, is a very different thing from anything we've ever experienced. This is a new thing. There aren't many new things in the world, but this idea of this isolationism, which I have seen growing incrementally for the last 40 years or so, 40, 50 years, all the way back from the days when we shared bathrooms and shared rooms with our siblings, to where every kid has their own bedroom and every kid has their own bathroom. Where
Now
we...
You're talking America.
Yeah, right. I'm talking about our society. Yeah, I'm talking about our society. This growing isolationism. Everybody, no one rides in a car together. Everybody takes their own cars. Nobody. People avoid mass transit if at all available, if at all possible. You know, I want my own car, and I'm just as guilty of it. I'm not saying that I'm, above and beyond. I'm the same way. I take my own car to things all the time because I don't want to have to be connected to anybody else's schedule or something like that. But it's an isolationistic culture that is bad for the church because the church is communal by nature. So it's very difficult. And the places in the world, as you talk about the world, where the church is thriving and growing are the places where you see community the strongest. Where is church struggling the most? North America and Europe, where we have this isolationism. Where is the church thriving the best? Africa.
I was gonna say too, you can go on the south side of Chicago, you can go to like Hispanic communities, it's very communal.
It's more communal than,
The churches almost thrive better there than they do out.
right, it's more communal than us,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but it's far less communal than what it used to be. You talk to any mamacitas and you find out she never sees the kids anymore. She used to see them every weekend. They use every week. They're always at the house, you know.
A lot of it's born out of economics too, you know, I mean, they can't afford to be isolated.
Well, I mean, the wealthier you are, the more isolated you can be. Right. Yeah, I mean, some of the reason that we grew up communally was because our parents couldn't afford a house any bigger.
Right.
You know, so if there were 6 kids, and there were 6 or 8 kids as opposed to 1, you know, or 4 kids or whatever. But I mean, it was more than what it is today.
But it's interesting that they have like a communal feeling on sports teams, and they're pulling them away from their family communal life to be part of this community. Because they stay
Right.
at school beyond dinner time and only get
Right.
home to do homework and go to bed, so that they isolate when they go home, but they're part of this community.
Right.
They promote that. Sports is maybe a little different situation because somebody somewhere along the line realized that you're a team. You know, you're not a bunch of individual stars.
Right.
So you gotta make them communal. You know.
But that's really kind of like what the church wants to be, a team.
Exactly.
I'm not an individual.
Right.
So what are they doing that we're missing? We should probably.
Well, you're an individual
Well-
within the community, though.
Well, what sports has always had that the church doesn't is, you know, fame and worldly recognition.
Right.
You know, you get worldly recognition for being outstanding in a sport. You don't get worldly recognition for being an outstanding Christian. You know, nobody cares.
You get people dying to get in and be part of that world. You know.
Right.
Also, I think on many sports teams, though, there are a lot of individual people, like LeBron James, Michael Jordan, you know. Tiger
Well,
Woods. I think,
They're
well, that's an
individuals
individual
on a
sport.
personal level, but when it comes to team,
I don't know, I'm thinking teamwork too there.
What do you mean?
well, we'll use the word Michael Jordan.
Well, yeah, that's but I'm thinking of LeBron James. I think he is more of an individual person. He's out for himself on the team, really. I don't think he's
You know, the
really team-wise.
the example I think of, because I lived in Seattle all those years, Edgar Martinez. Edgar Martinez was a fantastic second baseman. He was the designated hitter. He just a great all-around player, and he only made about $450,000 a year. Okay, and this was in the '90s when not Tiger Woods, Ichiro, and who was the guy who his dad? And his dad was before him. Anyway, I can't even think of his name now. But there are millions. And I remember a reporter asking Edgar Martinez, "Why do you settle for making like less than $500,000 a year?" And he says, "I don't need more than $500,000 a year." He says, "I have everything I want. Why do I just want the team to win." You know, he cared about Seattle. He cared about the Mariners. You know, he was in it for the team and for the game. He didn't care how much money he made. He had plenty of money. You know, it didn't matter to him.
I look at like that, not so much the younger kids, but the high school. What I'm seeing though is that there's this brotherhood that's formed, and there's the coaches are like the head of it. I know that there is that I want to be great and I want to be wonderful, but there is just something that is, you know, they have these team meals, and there's just something that's drawing. They need that. They need this brotherhood, and are they replacing church with that or their family with that because they aren't getting it? It's probably because they have family.
Some of them aren't, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the others are just all drawn into it. So, I just think it's really interesting. I've been noticing it more this year, watching Noah than
Sure.
I don't think it's a bad, evil intention.
I think that there's a huge benefit to being communal, but you know, the kids that are raised and are kind of isolationist, well, look at their lives down the road. Quite often, they've got a lot of problems. You know, I mean, things develop out of that. You know, but the communal people, it seems like they're always active. You know, they're
I would say
part of your community. Or, you know,
the difficulty with community built around something other than faith or family is that you're building it around something that
of the human.
right. My concern today is that we have a lot of community being built around things that are not faith or family.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And eventually that all plays out because eventually you can't play football anymore or baseball or track or whatever. Eventually it all goes away. And this is what I've said to people who have, taken their kids away from youth group activities because, they can't be here because they won't get to play on Sunday. Well, you know what I used to tell Neil's coach all the time is that, sorry, don't play him. I don't care. He's going to be at church. And, I didn't have any fantasy that Neil was going to be an NFL star, or a wrestler, or he was going to make his life on WWE. He wasn't going to do any of that. It was it was fun. It was game and it was fun. And I was a parent who had, Dina says people are very materialistic. I was a parent who said faith and family are more important than anything else. I don't care what it is. Faith and family first. Built around God, obviously. God is the center post of that, faith and family, at least in our case. And so that comes first. Everything else comes second. People do not have that understanding.
No, they don't.
They are reaching for things that feed that community, but they don't understand those things are transient. They don't last. God lasts. God's forever. I don't know how else. I say it so often. I feel like I just repeat myself over and over again, and maybe I do, but it doesn't matter. If you are the best football player ever known to man, and you don't have faith, it doesn't matter. You're going to spend eternity in hell. So what? If you make Joe Namath look like a rookie, and you spend eternity in hell, so what? That's what the whole gospel is about this past Sunday, right? If your foot offends you, cut it off. If your hand offends you, cut it off. Was Jesus really telling us that we should go start cutting off body parts? No. But his point was, none of that matters like your faith does. Keep Jesus first. And then everything else will fall into place. And of course, the difficulty there is that you have to trust him, don't you? Because there's no guarantees. He doesn't tell you how it's going to fall into place. And so it might not fall into place the way you want it to fall into place. And thank God. I love using my example of my middle school years. I won't use the name of the person because I'm online, but I was madly in love with a person in middle school that I'm telling you, in my middle school brain, if I could have married her and settled down and spent the rest of my life with her, I would have, in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. Okay? And I look back at that, wow, would that have been a bad choice?
We all go through that.
But isn't that the case?
Yeah.
With everything?
Yeah.
We get older and we think somehow we forget that. We forget those middle school lessons as we get older, and we begin to believe at some level that we know best. Okay, that there's some part of us that's always screaming for that. All that faith stuff is fine, Pastor, but you always have the but. But we have to, I love, every church I've ever been at some point, I've had people say, all right, fine, all that faith stuff, but we need some money. Well, who do you think provides the money around here? It's not you. It's not me. It's God. This is God's place. He provides the money. And whatever we need, he'll provide. Don't worry about it. Stop worrying about things that don't matter. Worry about things that matter. And you don't even have to worry about those because God's already got them handled. The things that matter are the things that we do when we teach the gospel to children, when we proclaim the gospel from the pulpit, when we feed people with the body and blood of Christ, when we sing and we teach people to sing and to play instruments and to glorify God. And all of those are the things that matter. When we gather together in groups around the Word and look at the Word and say, what is God saying to us here? Those are the things that matter. He'll handle the mundane stuff. That's just mundane. I had a person tell me one time, oh, well, you won't think so when we have to cut your pay. I said, God will take care of us. He always has. He's always taken care of us. Not always in the way we would like. I've never gotten the hot tub. Just saying. As many times. What's that?
But you've never lived in a cardboard
I've never lived in a cardboard box, but I've never gotten that pastoral hot tub fund off the ground. What I'm saying, though, is that he's always provided. We've never missed a meal. We should have missed some meals. We'd be better off if we had. All right, Dina says, in LOL in my middle school mind, I would have been your daughter-in-law. And in my adult mind too, Dina. That, God doesn't always listen to us. Let's see. Oh, just one last thing before we go. I love this business of, in verses 71, 72, it is good for me that I was afflicted, that I might learn your statutes. The law of your mouth is better to me than 10,000 gold and silver pieces. Oh, wait, I missed one. 69. The insolent smear in me, in 69, with lies, in my whole heart, I keep your precepts. Listen to this. Their heart is unfeeling like fat, but I delight in your law. And so I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking, what does that mean? Your heart is unfeeling like fat. And here's the thing. I think that the psalmist is talking about flabby faith here. I really do. I think he's talking about flabby, out-of-condition faith.
My Bible says their hearts are fat and gross.
Yeah, fat and gross. And I don't know if you are a watcher or not of things like My 600-Pound Life. I love watching those shows because it makes me feel ever so much better about myself. But you look at these people and you think, how do you get to be 600 pounds?
Kind of sneaks up on you.
1 pound at a time. one Hostess Twinkie at a time. But I mean, how does your faith get to be fat and flabby? Skipping Bible study, skipping church, skipping communion, watching Netflix instead of reading the Bible. I mean, just little things over a long period of time, same way that guy got to be 600 pounds. Not exercising your faith. Right. Not exercising your faith. Yeah. And I love that business of their heart is unfeeling like fat. That is a great line. That's going to be a sermon title one of these days. Unfeeling like fat. Yeah. Put it on the sign. You're unfeeling like fat. They've taken the sign away from me. I don't know where they've laid it. If you gained what?
A pound a week.
Of
12 years ago.
yeah. Oh, yeah, no. It's not that hard. I bet you I could show you how to do it.
Pound a week doesn't sound like anything.
No. Okay, so 2 weeks we're off. That's because you're fit. You don't understand the joy of a Twinkie. 2 weeks we're off. Tuesday the 19th. We're going to pick up at verse 73 there.
We're off the next 2 weeks.
Off 2 weeks. Tuesday 10:19. We pick up at Yoth, which is...
Let me ask you one more question.
Yeah.
It said in verse 50, they talk, this is my comfort in my affliction, that your promise gives me life.
Right.
When he talks about the promise, is he just talking about salvation, or is there other promises that,
Oh, I think he's talking about all the promises of God.
what name some.
The promises that I will be your God, you will be my people in Jeremiah. The promise of the land of milk and honey, that your life will be full of joy and blessings if you follow the law. The Beatitudes, of course, this is after. I mean, he writes before that, but the Beatitudes, blessed are they who, and then go down the line. God makes many, many promises. The one of salvation is the most important, because without that, then none of the others matter. But he makes promises that he will bless us in this life. Don't ever forget that when you follow the law, you will be blessed. I've collected over my years of ministry so many examples of people who have gone out on a limb, or churches who have gone out on a limb to follow God and have been phenomenally blessed. Look at here. 18 months of COVID, and we've hardly been touched by it. That is not accidental. And while we have taken reasonable precautions, it's not because of our phenomenal precautions, because there's a lot of churches who took those same precautions and ended up decimated by COVID. I mean, that is nothing but blessings from God. I don't know. I don't claim to know why he has blessed us, other than he has a plan. He has a plan for us to accomplish something, or that we are accomplishing something in his name. That's why he blesses his people, is when we're accomplishing something in his name. I don't presume to say, well, this is obviously a one-to-one correlation because we did this and he did that. No, but I certainly don't think that it was accidental or happenstance that we made it through this virus almost completely unscathed. Financially, physically, every way. It's phenomenal. When this virus hit, the first thing Scott and I did is we sat down and we said, okay, what are we going to do? We set up the fire doors, not knowing what we were going to have to do to survive. Not even a blip.
And you only thought it was going to be for 2 weeks.
Well,
Or at least a couple months.
I never thought it was going to be 2 weeks. Yeah, because, and we really, because we know viruses last a year or two, we were not at all taken in by 2 weeks. We knew that wasn't going to be true. But we had no idea, we forget very quickly the panic that ensues when something like that happens. And none of us had ever done it before. Had no idea what we were doing. Just finally had to trust God to take care of us. Do whatever we could and trust God. And he did. Got us right through it. With almost unscathed. Few people had it. Few people got a little bit sick. Nobody died. Doris Swale survived Spanish flu and COVID-19. All right. Let's close with prayer. Lord, bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up his countenance upon us and give us peace. Amen. See everybody in 3 weeks from tonight. We're going to miss 2 weeks.
I have another question.
Yes.